Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for sharing your time. Time is precious. Life is precious. I'm living a certain life that is not as common in the day and age, but possibly something that has a benefit to us in the future. And so I'm here creating this channel, sharing a lot of opportunities in regards to the diversity in life, the creativity in life, and ultimately the preparedness in life. Now, as you can see behind me, it's a rather large bus, full-sized. Just keeps going and going and going. Make a good projector screen. Make a good place for me to lay out the map of what I see, the way I feel things are occurring. But I've chosen bus life due to a number of factors that here in Australia predominantly, which could end up becoming context of thought all over the world. Mobility, to me, I guess, I grew up on the road and moving at least every sort of 6 to 12 months, if not constantly in a caravan or an Airstream, until I was 12. And then that got ceased and then sent to a military boarding school. So from one extreme to the other, you might say, freedom to none. And I choose freedom. Freedom of choices is something that I like. And I think that there's a fair bit of that in my astrology and the creativity of it as well, that ends up becoming more of a futuristic, forward-thinking perspective. But lots of ways of being mobile these days, and there's different aspects and values in relation to it. So you've obviously got like caravans, and I'm assuming, when we're talking living like this, it's about having a lifestyle. I did cycle or push bike on a mountain bike back in the 90s, different parts of the world, camping everywhere, because, that was a part of the enjoyment and the outdoor lifestyle that I guess in reality I kind of grew up with until I was about 5 or 6. And those are pivotal years in relation to our behaviour and interests. So you never know what creates what, but in terms of going with the flow, living the Tao and experiencing it, I'm very much at home in the outdoors. Tiny home living is another one, which is an interesting one in relation to the idea that the tiny homes are all on wheels, and yet people want to move them to a place and never have to move them again. They just build around them decks and circumstances that make them more livable, expanding the space. But we have a lot of regulations in Australia, probably one of the most fascist nations in the world when we're looking at the laws that are limiting lots of our existence. So from region to region, council to council, and state to state, there are different regulations as to where certain dwellings can be on properties, and for how long one can live in one. And then of course there's the need for approvals, because it's all about the money. And any tiny home with loft bedrooms above doesn't meet building codes, and so is not legally livable in after a period of between 6 to 18 months, depending on the regions. And after doing a lot of research on this and lobbying a lot of councils and trying to work with state governments in regards to some blanket rulings that could be more beneficial to certain situations where we've got housing crises. One might imagine that there is more leniency, and especially in regards to the observation of circumstances today. But when we look at the cost involved of putting a tiny home on a trailer, sort of looking at a third to 50% of the price of the investment itself, and that to me seems a little bit unrealistic, considering the notion of parking it and then not driving it or not wanting to move it again. So why the trailer? Why not just the tiny home? Mobility for me is something which I build off-grid systems for people on their blocks of land. So having a house that I can move to the next block of land over the years has been obviously a key factor, and so hence 40-foot coach. And the lifestyle of it is unique and definitely not for everyone, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But one of the factors of it is the capacity for carrying weight. So there are many aspects of that. First of all, with caravans and tiny homes, the trailers for them are rated to certain weights, which include obviously the build itself. And what I've come to notice is that the more financially viable or affordable the trailer system is, the less weight it's going to be able to carry. Therefore, the less you can put into your tiny home, and obviously your caravan being a lot flimsier, lighter build. And so that causes concern for people in relation to how they can bring in their life into that kind of lifestyle. Then of course there is the vehicle that is going to tow it, and what the vehicle rating for towing capacity is, which seems to be stinging a lot of people here in Australia. In fact, recent holidays, and once again now approaching in the summer holidays here, there is a conundrum where holidaymakers are going out with their caravans and the car that they thought would work on towing it, and it probably can tow it. However, whether it's rated for it is another story. And so people are being pulled over and fined, and found that they'd have to have the caravan towed back to their house, and they'd have to drive their car back, and possibly have to go and invest in another vehicle, and just to be able to carry, to tow what it is that they choose to have chosen to invest in. So a lot of problems are being found in relation to how people are engaging in their investments, the knowledge that they have prior to making these investments, the intentions of these investments. And I've spoken to people that have ended up spending in excess of $200,000 in the long run to have a caravan, and then having to then go and reinvest in a vehicle that can tow said caravan. And these are problems for people that I think awareness is going to be key. And that is a big factor in terms of the weight ratios that obviously come to the surface in regards to how people are being restricted or financially requiring investment. And this is a concern for many, especially in a time when the economy is saying, well, what are you spending your money on? And how much are you going to afford? And our investments would benefit from greater knowledge in the short and long term. I chose a bus for reasons of, well, I'm living in it, and therefore living in it requires a level of making it a tiny home. And my home is a place of diversity. I think I've probably got close to 500 records in the bus for musical satisfaction. I would have maybe 18 months to 24 months worth of food staples to carry, and then tools that would allow me to do the work that I do in off-grid design, building, food forestry, solar design, water security, and maintenance, building, vehicle maintenance, and well, crafting, you know. I guarantee that the weight of what I've just spoken about, and not even including the build or any of the food preparation or anything like that, would put over any caravan over its weight rating capacity, and it would put over any tiny home's weight rating capacity on the trailers in relation to the build. And so I recognise that I wouldn't be at home in either of those. Nor do I have the multiple registrations in relation to it. So my registration is less. The fuel expenses that I run uses less fuel than a Toyota Land Cruiser driving on its own, let alone towing a caravan. And while I might get there a bit slower, and while I might not have the capacity to drive on four-wheel drive roads, I also know that most caravans aren't rated for it. A lot of the four-wheel drive roads, a lot of caravans get heavily damaged in four-wheel drive environments, which is why pop-up tents and camper trailers tend to suit them more for those remote locations. The very light building codes that caravans are built towards are not very shelf stable, and so expect pretty much everything that's inside lockable cupboards to be all over the place. Anything that's not inside lockable cupboards to be all over the place. And yeah, maybe a little bit more concern in relation to how much water you might be able to carry, and therefore battery storage that you might be able to have, and solar panels that you might be able to fit on, in regards to how far you can actually get away and how long for. So again, many questions should be raised in relation to how the process of making a decision of lifestyle compared to the journey and the costs involved. So yeah, insight is a big one. And look, I mean, a lot of people get sold something as opposed to building a life for themselves. And that becomes a concern as to whether or not you've got the need for what it is that we are looking for in a lifestyle, in the opportunity of creating it from being sold something that may or may not be what we're looking for. in the long run. And unfortunately, most people recognise this before, well, maybe not before, maybe in hindsight. So, a lot of opportunity to expose some of the questions that we look at in relation to how we put our lives together, how we design the future for ourselves and why we're doing it, what the interests are. But bus life for me has been a real enjoyable opportunity. A sense of freedom, a sense of simplicity, and obviously a level of outdoor lifestyle and, well, you know, the physical health that comes with it, that most people don't actually build this lifestyle from. So if you have any questions in relation to it, please throw them in the comments section. It's important to be able to look at how we choose to make changes in our life, and we want to take a look at some of perspectives and maybe advice from those that have done it and remain doing it, as opposed to those people that sell caravans, that live in houses, and as we've seen, all those that sell composting toilets but feed themselves off fast food chains, and there's no way that any of that food will end up being compostable. Microbiome and, yeah, genetically modified as it is. So we pick and choose where we get our advice from when we're looking at creating a new future. And if we're looking at things that are going to be influential, that will be where we get our influence from. So here in the process of being for you guys as an opportunity to engage in a future that most people have very little idea about, but may in fact need an opportunity to transition towards. So if you're in the predicament where you've just bought into the property market in the last 5 years and realise you've still got 25 odd years on your mortgage repayments, where interest rates are going to boost beyond the levels of inflation and stay there for a period of time, restricting all other lifestyle and expenses, job opportunities, and, well, life in general. We've got to think outside the box. And to think outside the box, we have to live outside the box. And for all those in a box wanting to think outside the box, that's why we're here. So, take every word from an influencer with a green screen with a pound of salt or a pound of flesh, as the costs only go up from here. With love and respect, the future is now. Until next time, we're out.